Well, folks, welcome to this episode of Al's Joint. Today we're going to discuss how the Trump cultists and his followers were bamboozled and hoodwinked, when and where. So it's appropriate that we lead into this episode paying homage to the main ingredients, and everybody plays a fool sometimes. Let's jump right into it. People are asking the question, why is this administration able to bamboozle folks, to pull the wool over folks' eyes? Because they've gotten good at it. They did the ultimate scam when they faked the assassination attempt on Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. Why? Look, all the proof is out there. All you have to do is do your own research. If you're still fooled after that, you're probably a cultist. Let's start at the beginning. You got a 20-year-old amateur who shouldn't be able to pull off shooting a rabbit, let alone get close enough to take a shot at the president or a presidential candidate. He was able to get on a roof in direct line of sight with Donald Trump. That's the first thing that makes no sense. Of course, everybody knows there was no drones flying. There were policemen in the building that he climbed on top of to take the shot. The second part is the fake shooting, the infamous ear shot. First, everybody knows your ear doesn't bleed like that. Nobody ear bleeds like that. You don't blame me, you want to test it on yourself, nick your ear. You may not get no blood to come out. If you do, it's a little drop. He bled like a gutted pig. And then we find out there's no scar. And what's his excuse? He's a fast healer. Get the hell out of here. Then the Secret Service allows him to take his photo shot, right? That's what he wanted. That's what this whole thing was about. Make this little weak man, the bone spur guy, the little weakling coward who wouldn't fight for his country. Oh, he's going to take a bullet. There wasn't no bullet. There wasn't no scar. There wasn't no injury. I don't know whose blood that was, but it wasn't his. And then there's a second photo shot. A lot of people may not have seen this, but he was getting in the limo. Instead of them throwing him in a limo like anybody else would be thrown in, if you look at when Ronald Reagan was shot, in 3 seconds, Ronald Reagan was gone. From being shot in the limousine and gone. This guy throwing up all type of fist pumps and gang signs. I don't know what's going on there, but it definitely wasn't because he was shot. Next, and a lot of folks may not notice, he refused medical attention at the Butler Medical Center. He got no medical attention at the Butler Medical Center. That right there should let you know what happened, because whatever they concocted, now you got to include doctors, nurses, everybody else. It's easy to just cut that part out. Oh, we'll take care of you on Air Force One. I don't know what excuse they use, but that makes no sense. And then, of course, in 24 hours, his ear grows back. But the most amazing part to me is that after all this, everything just went away. You don't hear anything else about the gunman, his family, nothing. It just disappears off the radar because it served its purpose. We were bamboozled. We were hoodwinked. And if folks ask, well, there were people shot, what about them? That's not a question you ask me. That's a question you should ask the culprits who put this thing together. Ask them why people got killed so they can perpetrate this fraud on the American people. You can't make this shit up, folks. So if you want to know what an ear injury looks like, here's Evander Holyfield's ear. That's how it bleeds, folks. Compared to this fake ear injury. Let's continue with our podcast question on why has the Maga and the far-right conservatives been able to bamboozle and hoodwink working class whites. The MAGA movement isn't new. The MAGA movement is just more pronounced now. The MAGA movement is the same folks who beat young blacks at a restaurant counter at Woolsworth. The MAGA movement is the same folks who blew up churches and killed innocent young black children. The MAGA movement is the same folks who hung and lynched innocent black men, women, and children. So the MAGA movement has always been with us. It just hasn't been as pronounced as it is now. The other question, though, is those other folks outside of that 30 to 35% core of hardcore lunatics and nuts, how are they bamboozled and hoodwinked into thinking that this conservative movement, that the Republicans had their best interests at heart? The 15 poorest states were all red states, and they've always been that way. If you look at the top 10, maybe not in any specific order, but these are the top 10. Mississippi, Louisiana, West Virginia, Kentucky, Arkansas, welfare states. Oklahoma, South Carolina, Alabama, and get this, Texas, Ohio, all welfare states. Tennessee, North Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, you get the drift. Those are red states. And guess what? If you go back, they were red states in the 70s. They were red states in the 80s, the 90s, in the 2000s, and they were red states in this past election. The question is, what's changed for you? Of all the things that the conservative Republicans, we know what they want out of the deal. They want power, they want wealth, they want to keep you in your place. So they tell you that the people who don't look like you is your enemy. But what's changed for you? You're still a welfare state. And those numbers aren't going to change in the next election. So we know that this last election was never about the price of eggs. It was never about the price of groceries. The only question is, if you look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what was it about? Did my life improve because I was focused on immigration, which never even affected me? It never affected the way I lived. Immigration wasn't an issue in the 60s or the 70s. You were still welfare states. Immigration wasn't an issue in the 80s and the 90s, and even in the 2000s, you were still a welfare state. So when you look in the mirror and you start pointing fingers at folks saying, why are they on welfare? Understand that that's you. Your state gives less to the federal government than it receives. So those blue states that you're screaming and hollering about are subsidizing you. And what do they get? They get the president of the United States to think that it's okay to go occupy their state. I want to thank folks for joining us for this episode of Al's Joint. Be sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. So you know we're trying to reach 500 subscribers. We're well on our way. With your help, we can get there a lot quicker. Don't forget to join me next Friday for my next podcast as we continue to fight to keep those Maga right-wing nuts from taking over our country. Peace.
This segment of Al's Joint is brought to you by Pave the Way Parking.